Call the meeting to order of the City of Frankfort Board of Commission regular meeting. Today is December 20th, and we'll start with the invocation. We have Pastor Jack Brewer.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we acknowledge your presence with us. We know that you're with us at all times. Lord, sometimes it's harder for us to feel it, but tonight we're glad that we're in your presence among friends. I'm reminded, Lord, of Charles Dickens' book, The Tale of Two Cities. It says, it's the best of all times and the worst of all times. And it's so good, Lord, to be out today and to be in presence with the City Commission, to live in our country, to celebrate the holidays. And yet, Lord, we're reminded of the bad times of our friends who are suffering from the tornadoes and so many who are struggling with COVID-19 and the new viruses as a part of that. So we realize that we have a special need, a need for you to bless us again. Thank you for our city commissioners, for our mayor, and for our officials, and for each one who will present tonight. May your presence be felt. May the gifts that you give us at Christmas, through the way Jesus lived and showed us how to live, be that example of what we follow. We give you praise for all of this in your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Brewer. Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll ask our city clerk to please call the roll.
Commissioner Waldridge,
Present.
Commissioner Thompson,
Present.
Commissioner May,
Present.
Commissioner Under,
Present.
Mayor Wilkerson.
Present. And we do have a quorum. And before we start tonight, we'll have a ceremonial item. One of our Chief of Police, Chuck Adams, is retiring, and I'd like to present him with a little bit of recognition. If you want to come up, Chief Adams, if anybody wants to come down. Sure.
Can we all come in? Then you can get a group picture.
Sure.
Kyle, can you join us?
You wanted this recognition, right? Well, Chief, on behalf of the Board of Commissioners, thank you for this first year, well, getting us through this first year. You've been a great public servant, and we wish you future success and future endeavors. But before we send you off at the end of the year, I'd like to proclaim, on behalf of the City of Frankfort, Chuck Adams Day. And I'll start by reading this proclamation. It's whereas Chuck Adams has been a dedicated employee of the City of Frankfort, serving for 22 years, and whereas Chuck has tirelessly worked with dedication, loyalty, and integrity to make the City of Frankfort Police Department second to none, and whereas Chuck has remained a faithful husband to his wife Becky and a supportive, loving father to his 3 children, Jonah, Kylie, and Lena, and whereas it is the sincere wish of everyone that the years ahead be filled with plenty of time to enjoy running, riding his motorcycle, drinking Starbucks coffee, and spending lots of time at Disney with his family. Eileen Wilkerson, Mayor of the City of Frankfort, do hereby proclaim December 20th, 2021 as Chuck Adams Day. Congratulations. Not only do you get this, but you get the ceremonial plaque too. Let's get a group picture, if that's all right. Got it, huh?
Pictures are all over the camera.
Even it out. Lisa, you want to come over here?
There we got it. Now we're going around. Okay? Train for that marathon.
Gotta run up that new Thoroughbred Trail.
You can always add one more.
can, I would like to take just a minute to thank the Board of Commission. This current one, I know you all have been in office for a whole year, you've been great to work with, and then the former commission that was here. Previous city manager Keith Parker, and then it's been great the last 5 months to work with Ms. Haig. So, and I do want to thank Laura Ross, who's always been a resource to me, and Charmaine, who have been so dependable to help answer any questions and give guidance, and I really appreciate that. And then my staff, the folks I work with at the police department are above none, and I would put them up against any other police department if it was a competition in professionalism and service. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Chief. Next up, we have citizens' comments. And do we have any that were online? You want to go ahead and read those before we go to the in-persons?
And I wanted to say before I read these, as we've stated before, and I think we stated this at the last meeting, the chicken comments that are being read tonight must be directly related to the ordinance itself. However, all the comments have been forwarded to the Board of Commissioners, so you all will see the entire comment. The first one is from Wayne Stacy, and it says, "This is a referendum issue, not a commissioner issue. The registered voters of Frankfort should be the ones making a decision on the ballot," and that was, of course, regarding chickens. And this one is from Earl Burton. "The ordinance draft does not have any requirements pertaining to the health of chickens. Alltech, the International Animal Feed and Health Company, told me that chickens should be inoculated if the eggs were to be sold. The ordinance has no stipulations on selling eggs. Also, the 25-foot distance is not adequate enough. The spores can travel over 100 feet. Finally, I have almost 100 signatures, of which 90% of the signatures do not want the ordinance changed to allow urban chickens." This one is from Michael Breedert. Apologize if I said that wrong. And this is regarding Frankfort disc golf. It says, "Good evening. As a lifelong citizen of Frankfort and a longtime disc golfer, I have VHS tapes of me playing as a toddler. I was overjoyed to see the addition of a disc golf course to the Capitol View Park included into the master plan. Unless you have children who play sports, bike, or play softball, the park is not a benefit to you. Disc golf is one of the fastest growing sports in America and has boomed in popularity since COVID, as it is an outdoor activity that allows for social distancing and safe play. Frankfort has the ability to become a destination for disc golfers, not only in-state, but around the world. Burlington, Kentucky has Idlewild, one of the top 10 disc golf courses in the world, where an annual professional tournament is held, bringing in thousands of tourists a year. As a taxpayer, I would like to think that the park system is put in place for the citizens of Franklin County to use for recreation and exercise. Not only will the disc golf course utilize a part of the park that hasn't benefited the citizens of Frankfort, it will bring revenue through tourism and positively impact the health and well-being of individual Frankfort citizens. We could have an empty field, an unused patch of forest, or we could fill the woods and filled with flying discs and happy citizens. Tourists spending their money in our restaurants and staying in our hotels would be an additional benefit to the county. Thank you for your consideration." This one is from Anthony Cox. "As a resident of Frankfort, I was excited that the master plan had included disc golf in it at Capitol View Park. As I understand, action item number 13 would restrict the access of this land for the community to use and jeopardize the plan. If this is the case, please vote no to the action item 13, Harrod's lease for Capitol View Park." And that was Anthony Cox. James Hale says, "Make us proud, let us pass the chicken ordinance." Katie Doyle says, "The ordinance was written with best husbandry practices for urban chicken keeping. I support this ordinance. And I believe this is the last virtual comment. It's from Robert Jordan regarding agenda item number 13 titled Herod's Lease for Capitol View Park. I'm writing today to plead with the committee to follow through with its previously approved plan to install a disc golf course on the north side of Capitol View Park. I understand that this would require the committee to not renew the lease in action item 13. It is unclear as to how many dozen hay bales the current leaser harvests from this land each year. I see no reason as to why they could not continue to do so, being that a disc golf course would not require the use of but a small portion of those fields, 1/3 or 5 acres. The rest would be allowed to continue to grow for said harvest. At this time, I am not certain as to how much revenue the city or state makes on this land lease, but it should seem clear that a disc golf course would serve many more of our citizens and would bring in even more revenue into the community by way of sports tourism dollars. East Frankfort Park Disc Golf Course alone had a user count of well over 800 unique players this year. These people came in from out of town, out of state, and even out of the country to participate in the near monthly disc golf tournaments held here. Dozens of people came to play in the league events every week. Still more casual players make good use of our disc golf courses. Just recently in August at the Frankfort Amateurs Championship, the Frankfort Disc Golf Association Incorporated, a 501c3 nonprofit, had so many players attend the 2-day tournament that all 164 players were forced to drive to Versailles in order to use the course at Falling Springs just to accommodate the demand. The sport is growing rapidly and the demand for more courses will only continue to increase. We would prefer to not limit our tournaments and turn away players. Hundreds of people in the Central Kentucky disc golf community have recently become aware of the proposal and approval of the course by the committee, and everyone is very excited as they await the installation as promised. We at Frankfort Disc Golf Association Incorporated have made plans, designed a course, and are fully prepared to begin said installation as soon as the committee gives us access to the property. At this time, we feel it would be irresponsible for the committee to renew this lease, which would seemingly take away this grand opportunity for our citizens to finally be able to enjoy the land alongside the previous leaser as well as others in the community. Please do not vote to renew the lease of public property and allow us to work together to share the land and its resources. Thank you for your time and consideration in this time-sensitive matter. And that was from Robert Jordan. And I believe that's all the email comments.
And for the in-person citizens' comments, I'll just ask that everyone keep their remarks limited to 5 minutes. And please address the commission as a group, not individually, people in the audience, or, and also state your name and your organization if you're with one. First, we have Aaron Ashcraft.
And Mayor, if I may, just
Yes.
also remind them, you'll hear me say at a 4-minute mark, 1 minute. That's not to distract you, that's to let you know you have 1 minute left, and then I'll call time.
Take-
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, I'm Aaron Ashcraft, Frankfort Disc Golf Association President. And I've been trying to get in touch and get to talk about Capitol View Park. So, excuse me if I'm nervous, but I really do well in front of the camera. So for 2 years, Frankfort Disc Golf has been trying to get into Capitol View Park. Whenever we were requested, we were met with, you have to coexist with the bike trails. And I personally met with Troy Hearn to talk about that and come to a conclusion that there wasn't really any room for disc golf in Capitol View Park. In fact, if you look on the maps, you can kind of see some of their trails going through. One there with the collage, it's pretty deep. So discouraged but not willing to give up. We kind of set back to wait for something to come more available, and kind of get our hands into Capitol View Park and get to work on that and try to get a course in. So anyways, on August 9th, of course, the master plan came out, and Brent Stetter Carroll identified the land there north of Capitol View Park. Somewhere between 30 to 38 acres, I think, is the land. And so we were excited, and to say the least. The master plan was adopted. State Journal published the maps. Parks made the maps public on their websites. And so we went from there and what we were seeing. We tried to we get in contact with Parks to kind of get more information on it, but we proceeded to go on out and kind of survey the land and see what it was, not understanding that it was under lease until about October 13th, when we were contacted by Parks and asked to not trespass on park property, which was, of course, because of the lease. So we did so respectfully, but we also contacted the Parks to kind of see what's our next step. What's our next mode of action to get access to this land? It seems like this is something that is feasible. For us, we were able to walk the property for 2 weeks and survey it before we were asked to not. And I have to say that the land lays absolutely perfect. It goes complementary with all the other trails and all the other park at Capitol View Park, complementary to Cove Springs down in the lower end. So a couple entrances for road access, parking, pavilions, but the best part about it is the things that we don't have an abundance of is park property on the river. If you can see, you can kind of look on that map and see the football fields. Well, if you look to the map north there, you'll notice that there's probably 150 yards. So just to give you kind of an idea of what 100 yards looks like on a football field, there's somewhere between 150 to 200 yards of river view there. Nice flat land area. Good for just about anything you'd want to put there. Not to mention, it's got a view of the Capitol Rotunda, the namesake of the park. Capitol View Park is right there, and that's something that we would love to feature as a disc golf course to bring people into our community. They can see these features, and not only just us. If it's not disc golf, then then who? Disc golf, the community deserves to have access to this land. I don't know how long it's been leased. I'm really not, I don't have any idea of the details on the lease and what it may pertain. I was under the assumption that it could be canceled at any time. I was given that information, kind of this lease, that any time the land was wanted to have access to, you could cancel it. I've been after it for 2 years now. I had no idea it existed. You can see the bike trails. They don't cross the creek. Troy Hearn's probably been in that park for 10 years now.
1 minute.
Sorry, no, thank you. I thought you were going to object to what I was saying. So they, honestly, they haven't been able to cross the creek, and I think it's about time. I think it's time to go over there and follow through with the plan, with the master plan. A lot of that was, developed with Brent Stetter Carroll. They did a good job of gathering the input of the community and listening to surveys. Parks and Rec, we've always worked very closely with them. We hold that relationship on high, and we plan to keep that way. And we would hope that you guys could help further strengthen that mission. Outside of that, and outside of being here, in closing, just like to add that really appreciate what you guys are doing. I think you guys are a great board. I've been keeping up since the master plan, actually, watching online. I'm glad to be back here in person, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Sure.
I'm sorry. So, of course, I'm not a disc golf person, by all means, and I try to get to the parks all that I can, but being busy schedule, I don't get there often. So, this is land that you're wanting to turn into the disc golf area. Where are you playing? Are you still playing in East Frankfort?
Yeah.
That's the last
Yeah.
location I thought.
Mm-hmm. So we have locations we have one at East Frankfort Park, and we have Lakeview Park.
Okay.
And we're always looking for others. We're actually talking with different private investors, private companies and private landowners and things like that. But parks is our bread and butter because obviously they help with the maintenance of it.
Right.
There is some maintenance that goes involved, even though it is very little. There is some mowing involved. We, as an association, we tend to help take care of it. But yeah, we would like to put 18 holes of a championship level disc golf course in there. For us, we kind of understand it, and my understanding of it is that that'd be something to kind of propose to an implementation committee, like the master plan implementation committee, to kind of go forward and maybe try to seek some funding for that. Being a nonprofit ourselves, if once we're given access to the land, regardless, we'll be able to try and come up with the funding ourselves and do the work ourselves. Our membership is strong. We have a good strong working board of actually 10 members, 5 seats and then 10 at large, and everybody is really anxious to get started and really excited. You know, that's where you get a lot of the comments from. Yeah, we're a very passionate group, but we're looking to grow the sport in Frankfort. Some cities, Bowling Green, for instance, always use it for example, 8 courses within 20 minutes of downtown. They draw in national level events, A-tier level events. Our highest is a B-tier right now. To have an A-tier event, you have to have 52 holes of golf, so kind of 3 courses is kind of the standard there. To host an A-tier level PDGA, which is Professional Disc Golf Association sanctioned event. That's kind of the goal for us, is to draw more people in. We work very close with some of our sponsors. Da Vinci's is one of them, the VFW, SIG. We've come down to SIG there. We had we annihilated the Sunday brunch one day down at 6. So we're doing everything we can. Our next event coming up is a benefit for the Access Soup Kitchen. We know that they need every bit of the help that they can get this time of year. So we do a local food drive. Last year we were able to contribute over $1,700 worth of goods and cash to benefit their cause. And like I said, we give back any way we can. Disc golf kind of sees this a little bit as a way to kind of open the gate for this property, and not just let us in, but let everybody in, let the whole community take advantage of this beautiful park. It has good features, good rock features, river bottom, everything that we hold dear, I think, here in
And
Frankfort.
what tier level did you say we were?
What's that?
What tier level did you say we were?
Our Frankfort AMS is a B tier level,
Okay,
and
and
we
the
have-
A tier level is the 50
and an
holes.
A tier level has to hold 3 courses. Now, what we did last year with our B tier was we made it look like an A tier. We wanted to impress our sanctioning, so we actually rented out Woodford County, the course at Falling Springs over there, to accommodate, because our demand was going to see greater than 150. We actually produced around 170 for that tournament. Most of our tournaments are all sellouts. Our last one capped at 108, and I had people on the waiting list showing up just hoping people would drop out to get in.
And my
So
last
the-
question
Sure.
would be, what acreage is this area? Do you know what,
35.
this little area right here,
Which,
that would just have the disc golf?
oh, the where it says on the map there on the
Yeah,
master plan.
like, what is the
Yeah,
acreage
that's
that
just
you
kind of
would need to
designated
make
where
it a
where the
52?
starting point is.
Uh-huh.
The disc golf course would fill in the whole area.
The whole
of 30
area,
of
so
30
it would
acres, yes.
use, if you
Mhm.
had 52 holes, you would
Yeah, and
use
if,
the
and
whole
if
thing.
given the chance to find the funding, we have a plan to call in a world champion designer, that we believe that name will actually help generate funds. We've got invoices and quotes, so we're prepared to go forward with this, and this could be progress easily achieved for the master plan, to go ahead and get something started and off the ground. We know a lot of those projects are big projects that are going to take a lot of planning. This is something that we can get started on rather early.
All right, thank you.
Any other
Thank you.
questions for the commissioner?
Quick one for you, Mr. Ashcraft, thanks for being here. The plan that the design that you had, taking up the 38 acres, is that required? Do you need all of that, or just given the fact that that's what's available, did we plant, or did you make the design around what's
Yeah.
available?
With the professional, the PDGA, they kind of have a standard of what a championship level course or even a novice course would consist of. Most of our holes are 300 to 500 feet, so about 100-yard span between shots. So yeah, you kind of need to take up that amount of area. We already have a pretty, I won't call it a novice course, but a beginner-friendly course, is East Frankfort course,
Sure.
and an intermediate level course of Lakeview. So this would give us probably possibly a championship to even pro level kind of course that would really just take off as far as the state goes. They would love this, and it would generate a lot of publicity all across the board. And being here in Frankfort, you know, 2 courses is kind of a day trip. You can come in, eat lunch, play the next one, and go home. With 3 courses, you start getting into the option that you stay, you eat dinner. You know, you've gotta stay a little bit longer. If we can, the longer we can keep them here, the better the revenue, right?
And how much money is this gonna require for you to build this out?
So so to build a course, and we've got a lot of quotes, but for just the pads and the baskets and you know, signage and things like that, you're looking at around $12,000. So about the money you'd spend on your 0-turn lawnmower.
To build all of that?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, if we hire in a championship guy to come in and design it, that's about $6,000 for him. That's the quote he gave us to come in and design it. So less than $20,000, and we're off the ground.
So you don't need any, you don't have to do anything to the land. To
Well,
prepare
you
excavation of land to clear out for
we're
the
a
fairway.
We're a
or-
strong board of volunteers, just like Kimba, Kentucky Mountain Bike Association, come in and created the Trails of Capitol View. We look to do the same thing. Yep. And on our board actually sits Mr. Bartram. He's a veteran, and he's the designer of East Frankfort Park. That is currently, I believe it's number 16 in the state of favorite courses, and getting better. We've gone through and tried to address some of the reviews of signage and things like that. We were able to put new signs in. If I'm to go further, I mean, we're donating to our schools, local school systems. We just donated baskets and discs and everything to Collins Lane over there not too long ago. Westridge Elementary, a couple baskets. In total, we've almost donated $1,000 just to our school systems to further the mission and grow the sport here in Frankfort. And we believe with contracts in our professional side and our pros starting to churn up $1 million a year for a professional player, I believe this is something that we can seek out as a viable option for some of our kids to get in and use sports. So that's kind of in mission with ours. And if you have any more questions, shoot away.
We're good?
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Mr.
Thank you for
Ashcraft.
Thank you all
providing
very
that.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
You did a great job.
Thank you.
Next, we have Robert Jordan. I think we heard from Robert Jordan virtually, correct? Unless there's another one. Did we already hear from you?
Yeah, in the citizen comments, yes, you've heard my citizen comments, and that's the majority of what I was going to
Okay.
say. But yeah, I was gonna answer some questions that you asked him, so. But yeah, the cost of this course is very minimal. You buy the concrete pads, you buy the baskets, and give us about a month and we'll have them in.
Okay.
We weed eat, it'll be a beautiful course. We'll clear all down by the river so that people can actually get down there and walk by the river and see the closest view of Capitol Rotunda at Capitol View Park. So just please don't renew this lease, because I have a strange feeling that it'll tie it up for another 5 years. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jordan. And next, we have Whitney Lawson.
Good evening.
Hi.
I'm Whitney Lawson. I'm with the firm True Garneri Air. I'm here on behalf of my client, Mr. Hogan, who's part of item 10 of tonight's agenda, a vote in regards to his employment with the city of Frankfort. In working with Mr. Hogan through this, there are a couple of things, quite frankly, as a citizen of Frankfort, that I think require immediate attention by this commission in terms of employees and the personnel actions that are taken, and the ability they have to speak to those personnel actions before they're taken. I'm sure everyone on the commission is very aware of how your all's personnel matters are handled, which is a determination is made. You all have complete discretion as to whether that individual is given a hearing. Quite frankly, the way that it is written makes your all's decisions as a commission and the city of Frankfort, it protects immensely decisions that are made by the city with very little oversight. I'll point out to the commission that state government even recognizes the importance of anyone's ability to question a decision that is made by an employer, but especially when that employer is a government entity. In a state employment situation, you are entitled to a hearing before anything is done permanently in regards to your employment. This is something that I think immediately needs to be reviewed. And in conjunction with that, I think there needs to be review of the alcohol and substance use policy. Currently, the city has a no tolerance policy, which on the face of it makes perfect sense. It seems reasonable, and many may see it as expected in terms of what you should see from a city. But like so many things in life, what is said on paper and how it plays out in reality are two very different things. I have seen in the immediate situation an employee who is a good employee, has been a good employee for the city of Frankfort over the last 6 years, who is posed to lose his employment over something that simply does not fulfill the purpose of that policy. If you read the policy, the purpose is to make sure that citizens and employees are safe while the city's duties are being executed. So the real question in that purpose is was that individual under the influence while working for the city? What's happened to Mr. Hogan? That's not the circumstance at all. It's not at all. The other reality that we have with it is that these random drug screens that are currently required under statutes for CDL holders that work for the city, requirement to report upon accidents for drug screening and alcohol screening. It's an unfortunate reality, but it is a reality that it is disproportionately impacting minorities that work for this city. You all have got to review these policies to give more discretion to supervisors within the city, to the commission, and you all have got to give employees of the city an opportunity to bring these issues to you all before these types of decisions are made. It is quite frankly unfair. It is unfair, and you are, in allowing this to continue, we are putting ourselves in a position as a city that we are losing formidable, good employees
1 minute.
over policies that, in effectuating them, are not meeting the goals of why they were put in place to begin with. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's awesome. That concludes the citizens' comments. And we next have a presentation. Greg McLavitt, Charles D. Mitchell, City of Frankfort audit.
Thank you all. You all, I'm sure have read through this. I've already had a couple comments that people said they did read it all weekend. What I'd like to do is just tell you a little bit about what's in it and go over very few numbers. It's an 80-page document. So as you can tell, the things that are that make up this document are in minute lines in your budgets and everything like that. But what I'd like to do is just explain a little bit what's in the first couple pages. We're issuing a clean opinion, an unqualified opinion. And that's the main thing as the city and your funding agencies, that's what they want to know. On page 4, actually 4 to 9 is what we call the management discussion analysis. And this was created years ago, and you're supposed to be able to read that and know what's the rest of the pages. So those are just summation, increases, decreases in numbers. But what I'd like to do, if you turn to page 10, I'll just read through a few numbers and point out a few things, which I do every year, which I think need to have the commission's attention, and city manager, of course, and the finance director. And on page 10, you'll see governmental activities and business type activities. The governmental activities, that's everything but the sewer, okay? So business type activities, I know you're thinking, well, how is that a business? What it actually is, it's a proprietary fund that's supposed to make money, and put back into the plant, which is what sewer, much like the plant board does. Most of the money that they quote make is they put back into the plant. The governmental activities, that's going to be all your special revenue funds and the governmental fund and the general fund. I'm going to read through a few numbers here. You can look at last year's and see some drops or increases. Biggest thing is your cash and investments. And then you'll see the biggest thing under business type is obviously the cash and investments. Total of 24 million in governmental and business type activity has 26. Capital assets, obviously that's your streets, your bridges, your equipment, and obviously the sewer plant. That's over $80 million. And this is net of depreciation, which I sometimes don't even talk about depreciation because in a government it doesn't really matter what's depreciated. It really was how much money you have, how much money you need to put into the plant the next year. So, but you'll also notice down there on your liabilities, and the biggest ones on there, which I always point out, are the net pension liability, and that makes up what is owed of the unfunded pension liability. Your portion, the city's portion, which is 67 million. Last year was 59 million. The OPEB liability, which is the health insurance portion of this, is $20 million. Last year was 15 million. Now, a lot of times when I've spoken at school districts and other local governments, presenting the audits, they're like, "My God, we owe that." Well, that is just required showing if they were to come in and say, "We need that money today," that's what you would have to pay, and that would get you back the pension back to zero for CERS. It's not going to happen. The biggest thing that this commission needs to know is what you owe every year, and that's just the rate that you're required to pay, which has gone up this year, but the last 2 years it was 39 some change for hazardous, 24 and some change for non-hazardous. So that's the thing, because that's what you base your budgets on. This is just a requirement so that everybody sees what is owed for that unfunded pension. And like I said, it goes up, it could go down. Last couple of years this has gone up quite a bit. So, but that's just kind of the way it is, and how your portion is calculated is basically on your percentage of the overall contributions that were made in the prior year. And there's a rate in here, and it's 1.7%. Believe it or not, that's 1.7% of the hazardous CERS liability, OPEB liability, and I think maybe 0.7%. So you can see how much the unfunded pension liability actually is. So that's the biggest thing. That's not what you see every day, okay? So if you turn to page 12, page 11 is the income statement, which again, I don't normally go over because this has depreciation, doesn't have principal payments, which is not how the city is run every day. That's just a requirement under generally accepted accounting standards. Page 12 is what you see every day. If you were to walk into the finance director's office and you would say, how much cash do we have and who owes us what? This is what you would see. The general fund there on page 12 has $20 million in cash that it has access to every day. The other governmental funds, that's going to be your special revenue funds, your municipal aid, your capital improvements, your transit capital sales, your where most of your public works money is paid. That's that column. And you can see that under page 64 if you want to see what makes up that specifically, which I highly recommend. You can see what the cash is and what the liabilities are of that. So the general fund, if you look under restricted assets, it's about 4.5 million. That's your health insurance and workers' comp fund. That's money that's been set aside to be used in the future for your health insurance and your workers' comp. The accounts payable, that's things that are owed as of June 30 that were most likely paid in July. Total of 2.2 million across all the funds. Your accrued payroll expenses, 1.1, that's basically your retirement was a huge chunk of that, and the accrued salaries at June 30th. 1.1, which again were paid all paid in July. So if you look down in the most important, I believe, in this, besides the cash and investments, what you have to use in the future, again, this is all as of June 30th. Your unassigned funds, which are basically what we like to basically unrestricted, is $17.5 million in the general fund. You have restricted funds that are to be used for restricted purposes, which if you look up, those two add up to your restricted assets up above under cash and investments, workers' comp, and health insurance. Your assigned funds, that's made up of encumbrances, which are POs, purchase orders that are going to be used in the next year, and then basically a portion of sick and vacation time, going forward, vacation time. So, 3.5 million. Thank you, Alicia. We've poured over this quite a bit. So your total fund balance is $25.8 million. Again, you can see what that's made up of. Your unassigned funds went down, which you'll see on the next page, or 2 pages later, about 878,000. The other governmental funds, you'll see is 3.7 million. Again, that's specifically used for specific purposes. Again, back on page 64, you'll see that. If you'll turn to page 14, this will be the end of what I'm going to talk about probably, is you see your general fund, you'll see your income coming in, and the biggest thing that's changed from one year to the next is obviously, which things that you've already been told, is your occupational receipts are down about $2.5 million, $2 million, which you all already know. Your intergovernmental has gone up 2.4 million, which is the money that you receive from the federal government. So I think you're going to have that the next couple of years, and that's going to be gone. I know your finance director has explained what it's going to look like in a couple of years, and obviously doesn't look good. And again, I don't expect your expenses to go down. The other governmental funds, again, these are the special revenue funds. That's on page 66. It's going to explain to you where these are made up of. And you'll notice Public Works is quite a bit, and Parks and Rec was quite a bit, and that makes up a majority of what you spent this year. But you all, again, you all know this because you all budgeted, you all amended your budget and spent some more things than you had originally planned. So your net change in fund balances, negative $4.4 million. That's, last year you had a positive fund balance of 1.4. And I don't think anybody was on the commission the last time I spoke. Patricia was, I mean, a couple of years ago, is when it really was. Speaking about how healthy the fund balance was. And I know you all spent some money this year. After all that, the main thing that you all really, really have control over is your governmental funds, your general fund. And I know your finance director told you she thought this number would end up being about a $900,000 loss, and she pretty much hit on that. We do make some adjustments, but there were a few receivables that they had realized that they hadn't booked yet. But again, the biggest change under the other governmental funds was you spent quite a bit on public works, money that was set aside for specific projects, and Parks and Rec as well. One of them coming to mind last year was the lights at Capitol View. That's an easy one to pick out. So I do believe that the city is healthy, but I know that in the future is things that will be very, very specific to your budget. So and the sewer department is on page 16 and 17. A lot of times I don't really go over this because everything that is in the sewer stays in the sewer. So much like the planning board, everything you usually make, you're not really making, you're just having enough cash. But it does, we do show all the debt. You paid all your debts, paid all your bonds. You all know that I think in one more year, there'll be no payments left on the EOC. So that'll be coming. But again, I do really feel in 23, 24, the city is judging by that the state is may not come back to working, you're not gonna have that occupational receipt. So, I do think it's tough times ahead, the next couple of years. So, I do wanna thank before you all have any questions, Alicia, of course, and her staff, Angie, Kim, Jessica, David, just for their help in doing this. I will say, this is quite a large document to go, and not to mention the amount of work that we do to do the audit. So, but as a taxpayer, I certainly appreciate doing this audit, and working with them certainly makes my job easier. So I'd be glad to answer any questions. If you say, I want to turn to page 37 and ask about such and such a line, I'll say I'll get back to you, and so will Alicia. But I do always open it up to any board that I always speak to. So, hey, I would like to have a better understanding. Do you mind sitting down with me? I would be glad to do it. People in my office make fun of me because they know I like accounting so much. Be glad to go over this because this is, again, it's an intimidating document, and it is quite a bit of money. So I'll be glad to do it. But any questions, I'd love to answer.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for all your work on this,
Yeah.
Greg. I really appreciate it. Can you nail down the difference, the percentage-wise that was spent on Parks and Recreation and Public Works from your previous?
Oh, what it was in the previous year?
Mhm.
Oh, it was quite a bit. I mean, you spent, Parks and Rec was 1.1, I bet it was probably 400,000 last year. I did not make notes on that,
Okay.
but I can easily email that to you tomorrow.
That'd be great.
'Cause I can just look at last year's audit report. Like I said, I didn't, but it was, and Public Works was quite a bit, because you got Second Street, corridor, which was a couple $1 million, so,
I think there's an extra book also in Shemai's office from last year as well. I think we ordered a few extras.
yeah.
We want to
I can give you a percent, but it is quite a bit. Like I said,
ordered a
special revenue usually is ins and out, but, you know, it's, $3.5 million this year in those funds, so, but I can
On-
definitely get that.
On Public Works?
Oh, no,
On
just,
special funds?
yeah, special fund. Go right ahead.
I can add to it if you
Please.
like. So I know that some roads, I don't wanna say were neglected, obviously, but Katie did do quite a bit of public works, expenditures in 2021. I think she alluded to that during the budget discussions this year. And then also, what's part of parks is Pensley Trail. We've spent a lot on Pensley Trail. I know we're getting grant money for that. As Greg mentioned, the Sour soccer field lights, we did that. We've spent some money already on Dolly Graham. So there's a lot of things that restricted money was sitting there for, that it could only be obviously spent on restricted things. And I've encouraged the directors to let's use our restricted monies first. So that's why, Commissioner Thompson, there's an increase in what got spent in restricted monies, because we're trying to spend down, if we need to, obviously, if there's expenses that we can match with restricted dollars, that's what we're doing first, versus using general fund dollars.
I guess my concern is, and maybe it's unfounded, and maybe this is for the city manager, that we spend down those dollars on parks and public works, and by starting projects, we need to finish those projects, or we need to, if we fix one area, we need to fix another area, and may have to spend some significant amounts of money. And what I worry about, in any sense, is government starting to spend a sum of money, and it's very hard to pull that back when you started that. And I don't know if there is any historical record of that, where they have where we spent that kind of money and then pulled it back the next years. That's what my fear is.
It's most in prior years, most of it was spent out of the general fund.
Right.
So right now, if you look on page 67, the capital improvements fund spent $3 million. And you can see the breakdown of that. And you still have $1.2 million. You had $3.2 million in the capital improvements fund, which is basically your, money had been sitting there to be spent on specific capital things. But you still have $1.3 million left. And if you look at your municipal aid, that's basically your roads. You brought in specifically $630,000, including interest, and you spent 1.7. Well, you had 2.2 there. That number had been gradually going up because money had been put over there to do those projects, which had not been done in the past. So as Alicia said, basically she said, hey, let's go ahead and use the money instead of making the general fund spending, which is really smarter, because you're not taking the hit of the general fund, and those things had not been done. There hadn't been anything specific that should have been pulled back, I don't think. But again, you had 3.2 million and you spent 2, and you still got 1.2 left in capital improvement. So that's quite a bit.
Well, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Katie also indicated that I think she did about 15 miles worth of road paving and improvements. And that's all, Commissioner Thompson, municipal aid, that's all it can be spent on is roads and sidewalks and.
And the municipal aid is from the state.
That's our road
Yeah.
fund money from the state. And then on your capital improvements, whenever either you guys or the former commission wants a capital project, we move it into this capital improvements account, and it can only be spent on that unless we don't follow through with the project, obviously, and we can move it back. So the majority of that money was already money sitting there, even for projects that were there before I even got here as the finance director. And so these are just projects that we've seen through now.
Right,
We've done a lot of work over at Capitol View,
right,
done a lot of work already at Dolly Graham,
Graham.
done a lot of work at, on Pensley Trail, so there's all these things. We also buy equipment out of there as well, so
Right.
if you say, we're gonna buy a fire truck, we've moved $600,000 over whatever that amount was, and so that's a lot of it as well. It's big ticket items too. And that's all we ever do from that. Now, if it's obviously something that we don't have the money for, it's gonna come out of the general fund.
right,
But since I've been here, I've tried to have the philosophy of let's spend what we've got here first. Now, obviously, we don't wanna spend it all down, especially municipal aid, we wanna carry it over year to year to year, but this capital improvements fund is truly, that money's sitting there for a specific purpose, and it'd be those capital projects, so.
I know we have a lot of capital projects going on right now.
Yes, sir,
I-
we do.
I think,
Keep up with
I think a lot of the social media comments are like, they're working on everything in Frankfurt right now, which is great. I'm just concerned that there will be a expectation that there will be constant work like this all the time, and that those funds may not necessarily be there. I mean, we've followed through on projects here, specific projects that we've laid out, and that's my concern. Is like with parks, with public works, we have a lot of parks issues that need to be addressed. We have a lot of public works issues that need to be addressed, and I would love to be able to say we have all the money in the world and we're always going to have the money for these projects, but I don't want there to be a false sense of that we're going to always have enough money to fund these projects, because come 2024 it could be a bleak season where we're not just cutting departments, we're cutting wholesale projects that may have been sitting on the.
Well,
If I may add
think the
just a
city
little bit.
manager has done some of that.
Yeah, I would say, and Commissioner Thompson, from the discussions I've had, just starting out with the Rotary, the Kiwanis, Optimus, the Tourist Commission, and I think this year, when we're laying out an engagement on the strategic plan and for next year's budget, that the message will be how we are now, the ARPA funds, we have $3.5 million this year, we'll have $3.5 million next year, so we're good. But just like Greg was saying, fiscal year 24 could be tough if we don't, in 3 different ways. We need to raise our revenue. That's why we've hired Penny Peebler, and we're really focused on economic development. We also got to look at internal efficiencies, where we're doing some software improvements. We're doing a lot of different analysis on our services. And then we do have to look at raising fees. That's why we talked starting off with Jennifer Hills, because we had to get those approved before the end of the year. But we're going to look at all of them. You're going to see a big ticket item for a new garbage truck, $300,000. We are the only, Frankfort and Franklin County is the only community, all other surrounding counties do have a solid waste management fee to pay for those ongoing services. So I just throw that out there because I throw these ideas out to citizens when we talk to start that conversation, because you're right, we have to manage expectations. And we have to be honest and direct, saying, here's what our situation looked like. So I share your concern, and that's why we're starting to talk about these issues now. We have, 2 years to prepare.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you.
And I'll be happy to get the comparison analysis for you as
That'd be-
well.
that'd be
And I'll work
fantastic.
with Greg on
That'd be
it.
fantastic.
Any other questions or discussion for Mr. McClovic?
Thank you, guys.
Good job. Thank you for all your work. And next up, we have the consent calendar, and I'll remind everyone that when we adopt this, we adopt it in whole. And this is your chance to pick anything out if needed. If not, I'll turn it over to
Could
the,
we, actually, I'm
Commissioner
interested
Levy?
in taking 13 out for the Harrods lease for Capitol View Park.
that's action
Oh,
items.
that is
Yeah.
action items, right?
Yeah.
Okay. No, I don't have
Oh, well,
anything.
yes, we can
Do you have any?
we'll-
No.
we'll-
That's right.
Okay. Yes, we have about 10 items on the consent calendar, so please bear with me if there's any, and I'll read them through. First on the consent calendar, we have to accept the minutes of the work session from November 8th, 2021, and of the regular meeting on November 22nd, 2021. Number 2, the vehicle exhaust removal bid acceptance. Purpose of this memo is to ask the Board of Commissioners to accept a bid by Magna Grip for the purchase of direct source capture, fully automatic vehicle exhaust removal systems for all 4 fire stations in the amount of $209,413. You all may recall that on August 28th, 2021, the board accepted the 2020 Assistance to Firefighters Grant in the amount of $191,606. And we have already done a budget amendment of $19,160 to complete that purchase. So this will be provided at all 4 fire stations. Number 3 is the Kentucky League of Cities, the Cybersecurity Preparedness Grants. Staff requests permission to submit an application to the Kentucky League of Cities for a Cybersecurity Preparedness Grant in the amount of $15,000. The application will be for data backup and disaster recovery with the requirements of storing 2 backup copies onto different storage media in different off-site locations. And the grant should cover the entire cost of this project. Number 4, roadway restoration unit price contract extension for Public Works. Staff is seeking the Board of Commissioners approval to extend the 2020-2021 unit price contract for roadway restoration for an additional year. The contract was bid out in 2020 and awarded to Randall Davies Construction Company. The contract expires on December 31st, but it does allow the city to extend this contract for one additional year at the same rate. Item number 5, just alluding to that, is a new garbage truck purchase, Public Works. Staff is requesting approval to purchase a new, I couldn't get that acronym right, ASL, Automated Side Loading Garbage Truck. Public Works Department has presented several times before the commission. As you all know, I've been talking a lot about our recycling contracts and options, and the staff has mentioned on a number of occasions about the need for a new garbage truck. Normally every year in the budget, a new garbage truck is approved and purchased. This year, as we wanted to make sure we didn't, there was budget cuts, so one was not approved. However, at this time, during the long lead times on these vehicles, the solid waste would like to begin the process and order a new 2022 Peterbilt automated side loading body under Sourcewell pricing contract for the cost of $293,000. A budget amendment will be required for this purchase. Once authorized and a PO is issued, we'll be able to order the truck and have it delivered in June of 2022. The Division of Solid Waste needs to purchase a new truck to help maintain the reliable fleet of vehicles to service the city residents daily. This would be replacing a 2013 side loader that has frequent mechanical breakdowns.
May I ask a question about that? Is there potential for delays on that truck being delivered due to?
I'm not aware of any.
Okay.
Katie and her team were already doing the work to
Okay.
ensure that it would be delivered by June.
Okay. Thank you.
The Ampersand Sexual Violence Resource Center of the Bluegrass and Stillwater Center MOU with our police department. Staff is seeking approval for the mayor to sign and execute an MOU, a memorandum of understanding between the Ampersand Sexual Violence Resource Center of the Bluegrass and Stillwater Center Incorporated and the Frankfort Police Department for improved access to high-quality, trauma-informed sexual assault forensic exams. With this MOU, Ampersand Sexual Violence Resource Center of the Bluegrass provides victims of sexual violence with continued support through access to medical and legal advocates, therapists, and counselors, and a 24/7 hotline. Stillwater's Center Incorporated provides trained sexual assault nurse examiners, nurses who deploy with all necessary equipment to conduct testing and treatment for sexual assault forensic exams. This has no budgetary impact. On number 7, it's a MOU with Buffalo Trace. Staff is seeking approval to enter in a MOU with Buffalo Trace for multiple easements.
The City of Frankfort Sewer Department needs multiple easements for the East Frankfort Interceptor project that will cross multiple parcels of the property that is owned by Buffalo Trace. Staff has been working with Buffalo Trace to ensure that this project will not impede on any future plans for Buffalo Trace. The East Frankfort Interceptor will alleviate several sanitary sewer overflows and open up the availability to accept more flow. This MOU will allow the project to continue to final design. There's also no budget impact for this MOU. Number 8, the sewer extension for 772 Wilkinson Boulevard. Staff is requesting the BOC approval for a sewer extension contract with Thomas Bond for the property located at 772 Wilkinson Boulevard. Mr. Bond owns the property and wishes to construct a sewer extension to the property for future development. The owner has requested a sanitary sewer extension. He has met all the requirements of the sewer department for this. The entire cost of the project, including easement acquisitions, permits, fees, designs, has all been borne by the owner. Staff recommends that approval of the sewer extension. Number 9 on our consent agenda is the audit Mr. McClovick just presented on, and staff is seeking Board of Commissioners acceptance of the 2020-2021 audit that was recently completed by Charles T. Mitchell. We have received a clean, unqualified opinion, as Mr. McClovick has said, which testifies to the good work of our city staff. Thanks to our finance director, Alicia Boyd, and her team for all their hard work on this. Item number 10 is personnel actions. For the city to accept the appointment of Shelley Hearn in the police department on December 7th, 2021 as the community policing advocate. The appointment of Cooper Norman in the Public Works Street Department on December 7th, 2021 as a Public Work Tech 1. The appointment of Laura Marcos in the Police Department, effective January 4th, 2021 as an Evidence and Property Control Specialist. The appointment of Rodney Thompson in the Parks and Recreation Department on January 4th, 2021 as a Parks and Recreation Supervisor. The termination of Mike Hogan in the Public Works Solid Waste Department on November 24th, 2021 as a Public Works Tech 3. And the retirement of Charles Adams in the Police Department on December 31st, 2021 as Police Chief, and authorize the payout of accrued leave.
Mayor, two just technical corrections that we've just noticed on the personnel actions. It says 1/4/21 for the Laura Marcos and Rodney Thompson. That should be 22.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Any discussion on, well, no discussion on this, please call for a vote.
Move to approve.
Second.
Yeah, sorry.
Hold on, I don't think there was
Go
a
ahead.
motion yet.
We know what you meant.
Only a second in-person meeting.
He's like, Zoom, just go ahead and get a vote.
Okay, we have a motion to approve and we have a second.
With those
Commissioner.
corrections.
Okay, any discussion on the consent calendar? Seeing none, I'll ask the city clerk to please call for a vote.
Commissioner Waldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson,
Yes.
Commissioner May,
Yes.
Commissioner Unger,
Yes.
Mayor Wilkerson.
Yes, and the consent calendar is adopted. Next on the agenda, boards and appointments. We have Civil Service Board for Police and Fire, the appointment of Delvin Asofefa.
You worked on that, didn't you?
Friday, February 28th, 2024.
So, move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second by Commissioner Unger. Any discussion on this appointment?
I think it's a great appointment. We've been talking about it for a while, so I'm glad you were able to have a discussion with him and see that he wanted to continue to serve, so.
I think he's a fantastic addition to that group.
Any others? No further discussion. I'll ask the clerk to please call for a vote.
Commissioner Waldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson,
Yes.
Commissioner May,
Yes.
Commissioner Unger,
Yes.
Mayor Wilkerson.
Yes. And that motion carries. Next, we'll go to action items.
There we go.
Commissioner Waldridge, you wanna move anything?
was it number yeah, number 13. Can we remove that? Do you think, I think it's worth removing right now until we can discuss a little bit more. In regards to, all the, oh, I should stop talking and get my motion. I make a motion just to remove number 13 until we have a little bit more information, being that the information brought forth from the individuals and the residents made a lot of sense, and I'd like to do a little bit more research in what this lease is and that. So I make a motion to take number 13 off to give us a little bit more time to make sure we're making the right decision.
I'll second that.
All right, motion to table, number 13, the Harrods lease for Capitol View Park. We have a second. Any discussion on this?
Yes.
Commissioner
In
Tucker?
regards to the timing of, well, when does the lease need to be renewed to keep it active? What happens if we don't renew this lease by the end of the year? Do we have property that is no longer under that lease, or will we have time to correct that if we don't do it?
So ultimately, it will continue as long as you all are comfortable with allowing it to continue. However, I recommend that we very quickly get back on this. I know there are some, first of all, the lease term will be up, and second of all, there are some insurance-related concerns on behalf of the Harrods that I know they want us to consider. So if you all would allow it, I would like to recommend that we bring it back for the January 10th work session.
Sure. I
Okay.
think that's plenty of time.
Any other discussion on this? Okay,
Okay.
I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. We'll table that to January 10th, I believe.
Yes.
Now, going back to action items, first we have a second reading.
An ordinance amending section 37.31E of the City of Frankfort Code of Ordinances relating to pay plan, classification, and compensation. This ordinance amends section 37.31E relating to pay plan, classification, and compensation to create the new full-time position of Evidence and Property Control Specialist within the Frankfort Police Department.
And this is just a friendly reminder that this person has been working part-time, and we're gonna hire her for full-time.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion Commissioner Rogers, second Commissioner Thompson. Ask the clerk to call for a vote.
Commissioner Walbridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson,
Yes.
Commissioner May,
Yes.
Commissioner Unger,
Yes.
Mayor Wilkerson.
Yes, and that motion carries. Action item number 2.
And action item number 2 is the first reading.
Looking for a sponsor.
Sponsor.
Sponsored by Commissioner Waters.
An ordinance amending the City of Frankfort Code of Ordinances, section 37.12A12, relating to holiday pay and holiday leave. This ordinance amends section 37.12A12 of the City of Frankfort Code of Ordinances, which establishes holiday pay and holiday leave to add an additional day to the Christmas holiday.
Moving on. Yes.
I was gonna say, so this ordinance, this would formalize it, that at the beginning of every year, I, in consultation with the HR director, will determine, the third holiday off during Christmas.
Correct.
Action item number 3, another first reading.
An ordinance rezoning property located on Riley Road
Need a
with
sponsor, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
She was on it.
Sorry, Cindy.
I got it.
Sponsored by Commissioner Unger.
Try that again. An ordinance rezoning property located on Riley Road with the address of 14 and 16 Riley Road, more specifically described as PBA map numbers 061-0000-072 and 061-0000-070 from General Commercial District to General Industrial District. This ordinance approves a zone map amendment for the properties with the addresses of 14 and 16 Riley Road, more specifically described as PBA map numbers 061-0000-072 and 061-0000-070 from General Commercial District to General Industrial District.
And on November 18th, the Planning Commission held a public hearing on this, and the proposed zone change was approved unanimously.
Moving on to action item number 4, another first reading, looking for a sponsor. Sponsored by Commissioner Unger.
An ordinance amending the City of Frankfort Code of Ordinances, Section 90.07, relating to stockyards, barns, pens for livestock or exotic animals, and adopting a new Section 90.08 relating to urban backyard chickens. This ordinance amends City of Frankfort Ordinance 90.07 relating to stockyards, barns, pens for livestock or exotic animals to clarify language relating to the agricultural zone exemption, and establishes a new Section 90.08 governing urban backyard chickens, including requirements for the type and number of birds allowed, standards for housing chickens in a safe and sanitary condition, permitting requirements, and enforcement and penalties for noncompliance.
Some discussion on that. We'll move on to action item number 5, parks surplus order.
Can I
Yes,
discuss
Commissioner
that?
Thompson.
Is this my opportunity to discuss my issues with this particular ordinance?
We don't have discussion on the first readings, or, well, I guess it's up to the rest of the board if they want to.
Yeah, I mean, this is where you would
Yeah.
say it, because the next one it would be your voting.
Is that okay with everyone?
Yeah.
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, one of the things that I had proposed, and I talked to City Solicitor Ross about this, is allowing deference to the those neighborhood organizations, HOAs, what have you, organized areas that specifically had some restriction if you lived in that area to essentially require them to file that restriction not only at the county clerk's office, but if they wanted it to be recognized here, they would also have to file that in the office of, I assume, Mr. Cockley. And then if someone were to come along and file for the permit, that we would honor the known restrictions and not grant a permit if there were such a restriction. I personally would like to see what that kind of language would look like. I don't think it violates anyone's particular rights in that situation. I think that's the whole purpose of having HOAs and neighborhood restrictions. And I think we as a city should recognize that. By not doing that and just granting a permit to someone to have chickens for whatever reason would essentially require every single person that had an issue with a neighbor having chickens to litigate this matter in the Franklin Circuit Court because it's a real estate issue. And while I know that people say, you know, that wouldn't happen, people would be fine, they'd get over it eventually. I don't know. I mean, I think my, you know, from my emails and phone calls, I think there's a disconnect with a lot of folks who genuinely believe that everyone wants chickens, and I don't think that's the case at all. And the HOAs and the organizations for these homeowners have already started to band together. I don't think it's our responsibility to go to the clerk's office and find those and keep up with those. I think it's the responsibility of those HOAs to bring them to us, tell us what the boundaries are, what streets those boundaries are, and what that restriction is. And if it meets a restriction of not having livestock in their backyard that meets these requirements, then I think we should have it in the ordinance that we don't grant the permit. And I would like to see the ordinance amended as such.
If we amend the ordinance, is that
Um,
another first reading?
Right,
So,
Eric, or,
Yes,
No, sorry.
I'll say an introductory word or two about that. Yes, it would require another first reading if we amend the ordinance. And Commissioner Thompson, I know we started this conversation Friday night. Eric and I just had the opportunity to discuss this a little bit today, and we both, I think, share some of the same thoughts about this and logistical issues with this, but I know Eric wanted to say
No, Mr. Cocker.
his piece on this, if he could.
Go ahead, Eric.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah.
I have a couple thoughts and concerns on the question, particularly as it relates to us considering bridging the gap of going from our ordinances to these deed restrictions and HOA requirements. A couple of different things. The first is that I'm very concerned about the sort of slippery slope. As you all know, we had an issue come up recently with some building permits issued in an area that, are you all able to hear me clearly? Okay, just making sure. It was looking funny on my end. So as you all may, I think some of you may be familiar, we had some issues with building permits issued in a neighborhood recently where the neighborhood restrictions were more restrictive than the building and zoning codes. And they litigated that issue. So my fear is if we go down the slope of writing in neighborhood deed restrictions into the ordinances that we are reviewing, then other folks might have other ideas about other restrictions which they also would like us to enforce for them. And I'm very concerned about where that leads us. Secondarily, if we have this ordinance that generally is meant to be permissive for this, whatever your opinion of that is, and then we have a patchwork frame of neighborhoods possibly right next to each other, neighborhoods scattered around the city where they either do allow or don't allow based on the deed restrictions, I think we may end up cutting out enough neighborhoods that it begs the question, and I would just put this to the group and Commissioner Thompson, that if we go down that road, I would just urge you to consider whether you pass the ordinance at all. I think we end up with a whole lot of possible work while very limiting the degree to which this ordinance even applies to the folks in the community at all. That
Mayor, may I respond?
Sure, yeah. Commissioner
Okay.
Thompson.
First of all, with regard to the slippery slope, in the case that you were talking about, Eric, what was the result of that litigation?
I don't know if I'm in a position to discuss that or not, Laura.
Has it been resolved yet, Eric?
I'm under the impression it has. I can share, I'm happy to share with what I know, I just want to make sure I'm not.
Yeah.
The result is that the folks in question had to alter their plans based on those restrictions that were, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So talking about the slippery slopes, there's a big difference between allowing outbuildings, or allowing someone to have a burn pile or something of that nature, to allowing them to have live chickens. I mean, there's such a big difference between those two that I don't even think you can compare them. And quite honestly, if outbuildings, cause mold or some other issue that caused a health issue, I can understand. But when we're talking about animals that we know cause health concerns, we know have nuisance violations nationwide, I don't think that's a slippery slope. I think that's pretty clear what the difference of those two are. And honestly, based upon your own example with regard to the litigation that happened, they had to enforce the restriction. On the second issue of whether this is a permissive permit allowing basically anyone in town to have chickens, and you may have a patchwork essentially where there are so many areas that don't allow chickens, that why would you even pass it? And I would absolutely, totally agree with you. And I think that's exactly what my point has been throughout this whole process, is that there is in my opinion, a very large minority of individuals who are asking for this particular ordinance to go into place. And there is a very loud majority of people who instead of showing up to these meetings, due to a number of reasons, that have blown up my phone and other commissioners' phones and emails, essentially saying, you know, we do not want this. We will have an HOA restriction. We will do this. We will do that. And I honestly, I think if this was a referendum issue, I don't even think it would be close. I mean, I think it would be embarrassingly one-sided. And I agree with you that if you have a patchwork area like that, why do we even pass it? It's exactly what I'm getting at. And so, I don't think it's a slippery slope. I think by allowing this to be simply permissive without any review of that, you get into a situation where you can have tons of litigation, and honestly, I think the deed restrictions are going to win out. So all I'm saying is, let's prevent the litigation if we know that, say, and I'm only picking a particular neighborhood, but let's say Silver Lake institutes a restriction, and we know that Silver Lake has that restriction because they not only filed it, but they brought it to us in a formal filing, whatever we want to make it. And at that point, if they do that, then, I mean, there's precedent that the court's going to uphold the restriction. So why would we even force people to have to waste their time and money to get to the same result? So that's where I'm at.
Sure. So, I would respectfully disagree. Rather than you framed it in the terms of forcing them to invest money in policing their own requirements, and that's very accurate. And that's exactly why I'm concerned about enforcing any deed restriction that doesn't also match our ordinances. And while you may be entirely accurate that the chicken question is much more significant to most of us than perhaps a limitation on a type of fence or an outbuilding or an architectural style or the square footage of a building. But I think to my point would be referencing that in many cases we don't have active neighborhood associations, or if we do, they may or may not have the financial resources to do what happened in the example that we just spoke about, means that they're going to have all the motivation in the world for whatever those requirements are that are important to them, which we may not think seem that important at the meantime. Once we've suggested to the public that we will entertain the idea that we might consider building their own restrictions that could be different neighborhood to neighborhood to neighborhood, and enforce them for them so that they don't have to spend the money doing it. They have the full force of city government doing it for them. I'm still very concerned that you end up in a situation where you might have, who knows what folks come and ask you when they have problems like that, oh, good, now the city will have a conversation with us about possibly adding that to whether it's the zoning ordinance or some other ordinance we have to control the particular issue they have. And I remain very concerned.
Right now, you can't have them right now. It's already in the ordinance. So you're not changing anything with regard to policing.
Can I interject actually
You're
one idea
setting
to
a
frame
precedent.
this?
Because of a predetermined deed restriction, which was an agreement in a real estate transaction between two people, a developer or an owner and a buyer, and that we will now entertain enforcing that for you.
But what I'm saying is, throughout the city of Frankfort right now, of the 29,000 people who live here, if somebody gets chickens and they are raising chickens, you have to enforce that right now anyway. I'm just asking you not to provide a permit. Just don't give a permit if you know that there's an HOA, because you know it's going to be enforced in the local courts. There's precedent for it. You know that it's going to be a cost of money for both sides on it, including the city. I just don't see the point in not at least allowing the local institutions to provide the deed restriction, and then us not providing a permit.
If I may
City
interject,
manager.
thank you. You know, from the previous study session we did incorporate changes from that discussion, and some of these did, you know, come up. And I would agree with Eric. I mean, I just imagine it's a personal responsibility. If I'm buying property, if you take Silver Lake for an example, just like when I bought my condo years ago in Arlington, I gotta look at the bylaws, I gotta look at the restrictions, and there is a responsibility on that person purchasing that property. And opening it up that way, incorporating those deed restrictions, I'm not an expert on this, I know Eric is, I think would require a lot more city resources and staff than what is currently in this draft ordinance. I would just like to say is this to me is a policy. This is a policy choice. If the policy and the will of the board is to allow urban chickens, then this is probably the best ordinance we can have. We've done a lot of research, we looked at other people's, we had a working group that's been years in the making. But if the will of the board is to not allow chickens, then vote against it. I guess where I'm coming from, and I'm not trying to, you know, I think we've had a lot of debate, and I'm not trying to limit debate, but I'm trying to help us move, because we've spent a lot of time, we've worked with citizens, I know you've heard the comments, and for me, what's really important is that when this is up next month, the board can decide, yes, because we do want to allow urban chickens, and this would be the best possible ordinance we can do, or no, because philosophically, we don't want chickens. Because if we keep, I think, adding debate or changes, we're going to be still debating this next year, 6 months into next year, because there always can be another change. So that's why I think it's a policy. It's a philosophical approach. Yes or no?
Yeah, let's go. One question for city attorney. You know, so what Commissioner Thompson's talking about, us basically not issuing a permit if they live in, let's say they live in Silver Lake, and we know that. We don't issue that permit. Is that something we even have to put into an ordinance?
Yes, I would absolutely say that if we were going down that road, it should be in an ordinance, because I think, and this is part of the overall concern with this, I completely understand where Commissioner Thompson is coming from on all of this, but we have a lot of concerns about how we keep track of this, how we keep track of changing HOA restrictions, who's filed, who hasn't. What if some restrictions aren't complete bans on chickens, but are different from what our permit process allows? There are just a lot of factors to consider, but yes, I would say if we are going to not permit chickens according to HOA restrictions, it does need to be in the ordinance.
Can I?
Yes, Commissioner Thompson.
This is for City Manager Haig. When would I have had the opportunity to discuss something of this nature, considering that the working group was to construct an ordinance? It was not to discuss what people think and what people don't think. It was, chickens are happening, this is what we need to do. And that's exactly the way it was presented to the folks that were there, because I have several people who have emailed me and called me and said, I just stopped coming after the second meeting because it wasn't about talking about chickens. It was about, creating an ordinance that was gonna pass. All I'm doing is trying to add, very little language that could mediate and come to a compromise for some people. That's all I'm asking. I'm not asking for us to argue over the health effects or anything else. If it's the will of a group of people who live in a community, who are members of an HOA, to say, we have this restriction, and the city of Frankfort says, we don't care about your restriction, we're issuing a permit, knowing that that HOA has the ability to bring an action in the circuit court and will win, why are we doing it? And I've had zero opportunity until right now, until Friday when we discussed this, to say, hey, it's clear what the direction of the board and the staff has been. I mean, it's so much so that it's, if we're going to do this, this is the best ordinance. It's, if we add this, it's going to cause a lot more trouble and cost and things like that. You know, what I would add to that is there are so many ordinances and codes right now that aren't inspected and followed and things of that nature. We know we need more people to do that. We know we do. So the idea that one person in a neighborhood of the size of Silver Lake having chickens would require more than, sending one person out and looking in the backyard and seeing the chickens. I don't see the cost, especially considering that this allowance of chickens is going to be struck down every single time. All I'm asking for is a compromise. And you're right, deed restrictions can change. People can maybe not restrict 6 chickens, but they can have 2 chickens. I understand. What I'm saying is, provide them a form. This is your only ability as an HOA to say you are allowing chickens or you are not. And this is how it has to be so that there isn't any confusion and allow the permitting or non-permitting that way. I see very little trouble in doing that and providing the greater public who can't believe we are actually spending so much time and resources on chickens, give them an opportunity to protect their property values and their property in general. That's all I'm asking. And I'm not trying to be the person that is negative. I'm trying to come to a resolution that we can all agree on. And I can agree on the chicken issue if the people in these areas are allowed to, protect their properties. But up until this point, respectfully to everybody here, I don't think I've had the opportunity to talk about this particular issue. When we had the public comment a couple of months ago, it was all about, health concerns and things of that nature. Once this was presented, this was put on the agenda, and then we had the opportunity to review it as a first reading, this is when it's our opportunity to do this. And let's move it forward. Let's do something. Let's just vote on the dang thing and let it be 4-1, and we'll all be on the front page of the paper again with talking about chickens.
You're gonna have your own chicken shirt.
That's right.
And I'll say, Commissioner Thompson, respectfully, it was on a work session last week, and that's when we talked about it. That's when the ordinance was.
I asked if I could speak at that time, and you said no. I specifically said, is this my opportunity to talk about this issue? And you said, no, it is not. and I did not get a chance to talk
I'd
last
have to
week.
go back and watch the tape.
Well,
but
please do.
I find it hard that I let you speak. I hardly ever say no to anyone speaking.
He just said no to me, don't say no.
Only when you're out.
Mayor,
No, but I will say, but to your point, Commissioner, I understand where you're coming from, and really what it is, if people live in an HOA, they probably do so for, one of the reasons is that they have some assurance that their property values will be protected, or they'll be protected from things that they don't want. There, you know, when you are a member of an HOA, there are certain expectations, and I think this is part of it. Now, this is where the HOA is more restrictive than our ordinance. We would expect that the HOA would prevail. Now, I think from the HOA standpoint, the people that are against it, this will be more work for them. Once we allow it citywide, if we allow it citywide, then the HOAs will have more work. But that's part of it. And it may encourage others to form their own HOAs. I'm not sure, but I think that we have to, if we do this, and I think that's where we are now. We're getting close to voting this up or down. If we do it, we could make it a policy to just encourage and make it very apparent when people apply for a permit that they are aware of their HOA policies, and we cover ourselves that way, and try to help out that. And I'm okay to, I'm okay to put that in the ordinance that say that we would defer to HOAs, but I'll leave that to city attorney and Mr. Cockley to tell us if that's a good idea or not. It sounds like it's not. But anyway.
I mean, when they prevail, and that permit is struck down, that responsibility to police that is going to be back to the city. That's not on the HOA at that point. Because they're going to say that the permit should never have been granted for that area.
Eric?
Yes, Mr. Cockley.
I only had one other thought I was gonna offer, but I will say no, when those cases, much like the example we just offered, when that litigation was successful in stopping that work, no one said the permit shouldn't have been issued. And frankly, no one had the authority in that case to tell me to void the permit, except for the folks I issued it to that said, we being the builders, were required to change, not the city planning office, not the city building inspector. Our requirements are our requirements. If they are being held legally to that standard, which is higher than ours, then they are the ones that are required to alter their plans, not us. The only other thought I just wanted to offer the board, and then I'll happily let you all continue the discussion, but just something else I'll offer you in terms of the issue of choosing to incorporate deed restriction requirements, whether chickens or otherwise, into things that we will take on the responsibility of regulating. Most of the time, whether it's chickens, whether it's our base bulk density height regulations, whether it's police policy or parks guidelines, what we try to use when we make policy, when we write ordinances, is topic relative requirements, right? We may require something only on a lot so big, for example, right? We may only allow you to cover a lot so big because there's a base standard in the planning field for why that becomes an issue at some point, right? You can only have a fence so high. And those things are done based on, to different properties based on real quantitative differences, right? And how they function. Deed restrictions, when we go down that road, the fear is, do we end up with neighborhood X over here with half-acre lots and typically 1,800 square foot homes, 2-car garages, and they have no deed restrictions, and we issue permits. And then 2 streets over, we have neighborhood Y, half-acre lots, 800 square foot homes, 2-car garages. And now, because they made a personal decision to chose to place restrictions upon themselves when they went into that real estate transaction. Now we're saying, whatever those restrictions you chose to do, we are potentially entertaining that we will regulate those, whether they have a specific public good in the eyes of the Board of Commissioners or staff members that regulate such things. And that gives me concern that when we do this, we are now volunteering to work on the restrictions that other folks have made, which may be perfectly common sense for them and for the way they chose to live in that particular neighborhood. But they're not necessarily the same as when we would consider these things in ways that I can explain to the public and you all can explain to the public. Why don't I get them on my half-acre lot and they do? Why do you tell me I can't have a building in the backyard because of my restrictions, but I looked over my fence to that guy that happens to be in the other neighborhood and he put one right against his fence yesterday. I don't want to be in that position, and I very much don't want you all to be in that position. And it might not happen overnight and it might not happen often, but it will happen. Eventually, a neighborhood will ask us to go down this road again, and that's my fear. And so I'll leave the group to discuss, but that's my concern.
Yes, City Attorney.
If I may, I think this is a good discussion. I think that, you know, we very much welcome all of your thoughts on this. I also think that, you know, I want to be very clear that staff has never put this forth as you all should adopt an ordinance allowing urban backyard chickens. That is not our decision.
But-
We are.
But staff was directed to create an ordinance.
Right,
Yes.
but that doesn't mean we have to adopt it.
Right.
We were directed to create an ordinance for you all to consider with the very best possible provisions in it that we could come up with after engaging the community and hearing the pros and cons. We believe we've done that. We do realize that other ballot issues may come up with it. In the short time, you know, that we all have, that we've had to consider this, these are our concerns with the HOA and enforcement. But we will certainly, if it is the will of the body, add a provision to the ordinance. We can do a second, first reading, and we will provide an official recommendation. We will absolutely do that.
But
So
any other
yes, a
discussion
clear
on that?
direction from the board, if you would like to have this change, we will certainly put in the change that Commissioner Thompson articulated.
And what would the change say?
Well, actually, I would work with Commissioner Thompson
To,
on that to make sure that I'm reflecting it, or if he wants to give us a little, you know, an expression of what you think it should
So-
say.
I mean, I think it should say something similar to, if there is a valid HOA restriction that has been properly filed, properly adopted, and then also tendered to the city at some designated location, then the city shall not issue a permit for someone requesting a permit in those areas.
all right, Commissioner Unger.
Do we need to vote on if we want to direct staff to add this?
I
Or
I think this is a motion, right?
Yes,
If you
this
wanna add that,
particular-
you wanna add.
Yeah, that would
language.
be my motion.
Yes,
Okay.
for this particular change, anytime, if we were leaving the first reading alone, no motion needed. But if we're gonna change it, we'd prefer to have that
So
confirmation.
there's a motion by Commissioner Thompson to add language to the original ordinance that defers to the HOAs. I don't have the exact specific.
If a valid HOA restriction is properly filed and adopted and tendered to the city, and we can finesse that a bit, the city shall not issue the permit,
Okay,
is ultimately.
do we have a motion? And, looking for a second, any second? I'll second it, we can do that, I wanna ask, city attorney, what, you know, that puts us, if we do add that language, does that, the onus is now on us, is it not? To verify
on
whether
the
or
city.
not the HOA, so,
Yes.
okay.
May I,
Yes, Commissioner May?
can I ask a few questions here? All right, when was staff given the direction to start this process?
Oh, Eric, do you recall when we were first given?
I believe it was February, let me flip my memory. February 11th, 2021.
When was the community panel formed and discussed?
I will also
Do we-
let Eric answer all the
Roughly?
questions regarding that. It was within a month.
Over, yeah, I think we had our first meeting probably within a month of that meeting, and I've met 4 or 5 times since then, culminating in, I believe, our last meeting in October.
Is it appropriate and ethical for us as city commissioners to participate in all of those meetings, community panels, so long as there's not a personnel issue or something that is that okay, appropriate for?
We didn't set it up that way, but we could, certainly, there are a couple options there. Yes, you absolutely have the right to attend if you want, but you all could not engage in any way if more, if a
Right.
quorum was there, as per usual. Or you could assign someone from the group or two to go to those meetings. So those were kind of the opportunities that we had before us. We went the route of having the citizens there only and staff, but,
Sure.
But no, there was nothing to prohibit you all from attending as long as the appropriate precautions are taken. Is that your question?
I think so, yes, and then would it, as those are going on, if we have questions about those meetings as they are going on, would it be appropriate for us to come and ask Mr. Cockley or
Absolutely.
throughout the
Absolutely.
process?
Yes, absolutely.
Right, okay. Because I just feel like I've had the chance to participate in the conversation knowing that. And that's, I guess, is more of my point, is I do feel like I've had the appropriate amount of time to, if I've had questions or concerns, send the emails over. You know, when people have emailed me or called me throughout this process, I definitely take those concerns and walk right into Mr. Cockley's office if he's there and he's got the time, and vice versa. That's why I was asking the questions, was just to make sure I felt like it had been ongoing opportunity.
Commissioner Thompson?
Mr. Cockley, when you had these public forums, can you tell me what the typical agenda was with the public forum?
So they were informal working meetings, so I wouldn't refer to it as a public forum per se. But the agenda for all but the very first one was basically the same. We worked on a draft of the ordinance and discussed questions about it. But we started our first meeting, and as we often do with groups like this on a contentious subject, set a very minimal agenda and essentially got us all in the room and allowed folks to kind of just share their general thoughts about the topic, do some, what I would refer to as venting by both sides, get familiar with one another, and then give staff an opportunity to say, okay, folks, here's how this is going to work. This is what we're working towards. This is the directive I've been given. And then let them know what's coming in the next meeting. The next meeting, we didn't directly go to ordinance drafting. We worked on some key questions to discuss about what this might look like that would relate to future language. And then following that, each meeting, we worked on the draft of the ordinance, and would go through it.
So would you agree with me then that this working group, after the first venting session, as you said, it wasn't really an opportunity for any of the public to essentially say, you know, here's 100 signatures on a petition, here's our lawyer that says that we can do this. There wasn't really an opportunity for that. It was just, y'all can vent, and then next week when we come in, this is what's gonna happen, and we need to start talking about language with regard to the ordinance.
Commissioner, this isn't related to the
Yeah,
motion. Hold on.
I think
We
it
have a
is.
motion we still have a motion on the ordinance, though, to add the language.
Yeah.
Or not?
Commissioner May made the point that everyone had had the opportunity to essentially participate and say their piece with regard to the issues with chickens within the city. And I don't believe that the individuals who strongly disagree with this ever had an opportunity to present that. I think,
Well, do we want to vote on the motion to add the language first, before we get into this? Yes. Do we have any discussion about the motion to add the language on the, for the HOAs, to get this out of the way? Any discussion on that? Not? Yeah. All those in favor of adding the additional language, say aye.
aye.
All right. All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Same sign.
Abstain.
Aye.
Abstain.
We're not gonna add that to the ordinance, so we'll now, any other discussion on?
Mayor, would you like to answer Chris Thompson's question? Mayor, I'm sorry, Mayor Wilkinson.
Yes.
Did he say Mayor May? Did he say Mayor May? Are you that flustered?
Mr. Copley, go ahead.
He's wearing a blazer.
Sorry about that. Commissioner Thompson, you're correct. I was given a directive to prepare an ordinance, and I made it clear to the folks there that were opposed to the very topic of doing that this wasn't going to be the forum to try to stop that I was going to be directed to complete this, bring it back to the commission, and then the commission would make a decision about whether to pass it, change it, or not do it at all. And I wanted to make it clear with them so that they didn't have the impression that they might make a good argument against it, and then I would suddenly say, okay, great, you know what, I agree with you, and I'm gonna just stop this, and I'll tell the commissioners that, the Board of Commissioners, that I'm not completing the task I was directed to. So,
And I agree with you, Eric, Mr. Cockley, and I appreciate that and everything you do. I just think it's unfortunate that there truly wasn't an opportunity for the general public to express their displeasure. I assume that's going to happen in May at this point. So, that's just the reality of it. So.
Commissioner Roberts.
I don't have so much a comment because I'm sort of at that abstain area, but, I mentioned this before, May's right around the corner. This couldn't just be put on the ballot for everyone to do their vote in May.
Unfortunately, there are restrictions on what can actually be placed up for a public referendum, and I do not think that this fits within the parameters of what can be placed. Now, of course, if you all wanted to do an informal polling or something like that's a different situation. But as far as an official place on the ballot, I don't think we have the option to do that.
Okay. I just didn't know, with it
Sure.
being dealing with people's private property, and then there could be an outcome of health issues, things of that nature, I just thought that would be something that would approve to be on the ballot because of health outcomes and things of that nature that could.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah, it's, and I'm happy to send you all some more information on that.
Yeah. That's all I have.
Okay. No further discussion on this first reading. So we will direct staff to, I guess, January, second reading, as is. And we can vote it up or down.
And we'll
That would be
provide
neat.
language on the referendums.
Right, and if you're for it or against it, this is your time to contact us. Thank you. Next, action item number 5, Parks surplus order.
The purpose of this agenda item is to seek Board of Commissioners approval for the Parks Department to surplus in 2006 for F-150.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve, there's a second, and do we have any discussion on this action item, Parks surplus order? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call for a vote.
Commissioner Waldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson,
Yes.
Commissioner May,
Yes.
Commissioner Unger,
Yes.
Mayor Wilks.
Yes, motion carries. Action item number 6, Police Department surplus order.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this agenda item is to seek commission approval to declare 2 city-owned handguns as surplus for buyback by retiring Police Chief Chuck Adams. The Frankfort Code ordinance allows for the purchase of service weapons by retired officers. Police Chief Adams has expressed an interest in purchasing that back. The amount has already been raised by his fellow officers to purchase it for him.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion Commissioner Waldridge, second Commissioner Unger. Any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to please call for a vote.
Commissioner Waldridge?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner May?
Yes.
Commissioner Unger?
Yes.
Mayor Wilkerson?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, Chief Adams. Action item number 7.
This order allows employees 2 hours of paid leave up to 4 times a year to donate blood whenever the city is under a declaration of emergency. This is in response to our previous voting session where Commissioner Thompson suggested this, especially after the horrific storms in western Kentucky in general, to allow this.
Move to
Yeah,
approve.
a second, sorry.
Motion
I
Commissioner
didn't
Unger,
realize it
second
was done. I apologize.
Commissioner Thompson. Is there any discussion on this motion?
No, sir.
I think it's a good idea, and ask the city clerk to please call for a vote.
Commissioner Waldridge?
Yes, sorry, yes. I was in a daze, yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes, very much.
Commissioner May?
Yes.
Commissioner Unger?
Yes.
Mayor Wilkerson?
Yes. And that motion carries. Action item number 8.
An order proclaiming Monday, December 27th, 2021 as a holiday during which the public offices of the city shall be closed. This is in response to Commissioner Waldridge's suggestion. You just also heard the first reading to make this as part of our ordinances, but we didn't have time to do the whole ordinance, so this is a municipal order for this year. And just want to remind people that, you know, police, public safety, solid waste, everybody, you know, we will deliver all essential services, and those that cannot take that day off will take it at another time.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion Commissioner Waldridge, second Commissioner Unger. Any discussion? Seeing none, ask the clerk to call for a vote.
Commissioner Waldridge?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner May?
Yes.
Commissioner Unger?
Yes.
Mayor Wilkerson?
Yes, and that motion carries. Action item number 9, Yes Arts.
Yes, Mayor, I'm pleased to report that Yes Arts and the county clerk have come to an agreement on the shared use of the premises that formerly housed the Frankfort Plant Board. This amendment adjusts the rent, lowers it just a little bit since Yes Arts will be unable to fully use the premises during election weeks. So, and after this, we'll reach out to the county clerk and prepare a lease, so it will make it formal about the county clerk's use of the premises as well.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion Commissioner May, second Commissioner Unger. Any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, hearing none, I'll ask the clerk to call for a vote.
Commissioner Waldridge?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner May?
Yes.
Commissioner Unger?
Yes.
Mayor Wilkerson?
Yes. Action item number 10, CARES Coalition Consultant.
Yes, thanks again to Blair Hecker and our emergency management team who've been working on this for quite some time. You know, I've attended CARES meetings and have spoken to Blair about this in depth, and I truly believe this is the right way to go to hire a consultant through the normal city hiring processes. We'll have an interview panel, we will advertise, find the best person to be able to really put the CARES Coalition on a solid foundation and start focusing on long-term solutions to housing here in our community.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion Commissioner Unger, second Commissioner Waldridge. Any discussion on the CARES Coalition Consultant? We have Ms. Hecker here, but no discussion, no questions.
think it's a great idea. I think, I will say this, Mayor. Last Friday, Blair and I were at the Franklin County fiscal court meeting. Blair gave a great presentation, as she always does, with regard to the need for the CARES Coalition. There were several questions. There are still several questions regarding this from some magistrates, and they wanted to kind of sit on this. Not totally sure why, but they had some questions for me as well, and why we were doing it and why we were pushing this. Essentially, trying to explain that all we're doing right now is finding a consultant. The consultant is the main thing that's going to drive what we end up doing with everything else. Since then, I have been told that there are a number of agencies, many of whom we essentially started this project for, that said they will not participate and they will not do anything that the city says, which is very interesting, considering that they just came to us and asked us for emergency funds. But I think that the idea of having an organization to be able to manage the funds and wisely throughout the year is an excellent opportunity for these organizations. I believe that we should. Move to fund the entire $30,000, and that if the county gets on board, that's great, and the county can help with everything that happens, because it's a city and county problem. Whether they decide to not do that, that's on them, to assist with this individual, but it needs to happen, and we can't wait on the county making a resolution to do that. I know last time I tried to say the word joint resolution, and everybody went to recess immediately. So I know that word is out, but I do think that we need to cover the $30,000, at least get this process started, because we need it. We need it before the budget process comes to us in June. And if we don't have someone that's able to get the 501c3 process started, if we don't have someone that can set up a coalition of members and create bylaws and funding sources, while also being able to find other funding sources right out the gate, then we could, then we're back in the same place we were just a few weeks ago. And as Commissioner Waldridge has said many times, we are not in the business of running homeless shelters, but we are in the business of helping our citizens. So this is the way to do that, I think, and I think we should do this, and I think we should fund the entire $30,000, and if the county wants to reimburse us, great.
And let me ask the city manager, the motion that's on the table now is us funding the 30,000,
Yes.
right? And we hope to get,
And
it'd be
that's-
nice to get some help from the county.
Absolutely, that's what I was gonna clarify, the resolution that you guys have, so based on the presentation that we gave last week, this is the next step for the CARES Coalition, is to get this consultant. I haven't heard from any agencies who have hesitancies per se, but I will say no agencies are signed up yet, because we are still finishing out these MOU agreements and exactly what this coalition is gonna be, so that it works both ways, that it works for the agencies, and then, the agencies are able to give into that as well. And I think that this consultant will drive a lot of that work, and meeting one-on-one with those boards and answering questions and alleviating any concerns and getting it to a good product that's good for us, and that's good for those agencies as well. So we did present to the fiscal court. We presented a resolution. It wasn't a joint resolution. It's actually the same format as what we proposed for the Simon House project, which was last year's commission, where each governing body has a separate resolution to vote on their portion of that project. The fiscal court requested more time, did not make a decision that day on that resolution for $15,000. So after speaking with the city manager and just evaluating how important where we are in the process with the CARES Coalition and how important that it is that we are really able to start moving in January, that's why we went with our recommendation to have you all go ahead and approve the full $30,000. If the fiscal court does decide they want to partner in that, that's fine. That, it was going to be on a reimbursement basis to the city anyway under that original agreement. It doesn't change that. It also does not change what their involvement could be later on. Anything that comes before City Commission or fiscal court from the CARES Coalition will happen regardless. We just want to get this coalition or this consultant position established to get everybody to that point.
How are you gonna advertise for the position?
We are going to put out an RFQ, a request for qualifications, and in this resolution that you guys have, the second page has what that scope of services will be. It's not going to be necessarily a job description per se. We're really looking for someone based on the qualifications that they have, the education, the experience that they have in walking similar nonprofit groups through a model like this.
Motion to approve.
Oh, we have already, it's, no further discussion? I think we already have a motion and a second, so.
We do.
Ask
do
clerk to call for a vote.
Oh, I guess I'm blank. It's the last meeting, right?
Commissioner Waldridge,
Yes, I support this, definitely. Thank
Commissioner
you, Blair.
Thompson,
Absolutely, and great job, Blair.
Commissioner May,
Yes, thank you so much.
Commissioner Unger,
Yes.
Mayor Wilkerson.
Yes, and thank you for your hard work. This is
Thank
gonna
you,
be
guys.
great.
Thank you so much.
Innovative. That's us. All right, action item number 11, new fire station.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is to request approval from the Board of Commissioners for the next steps in developing the design of new fire station number 1. This $100,000 will complete the following next phases: design development, geotechnical investigations, and most importantly, construction documents, and will allow the site to be pad ready by July 2022.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve, Commissioner Waldridge, second, Commissioner Thompson. Any discussion or questions? We have
I'm
Chief-
excited.
Chief Briscoe on the line.
Yes, I'm excited, and I'm glad that Chief Briscoe and the team and everyone has kept this moving in the right direction. It started on my other commission, and just seeing this to fruition will be great. And I hope that we can basically stay on this trajectory for 2022, and if not, before before July 2022, if that's even possible. But
Any other discussion
I
or
thought I heard Gary
questions?
say something.
No? Anything you want to add, Chief, while you're on camera?
I just want to thank y'all for supporting us through. It's been a long journey, and hopefully we can continue forward and have a infrastructure plan for the future that meets the need of the community. So thank you all.
Thank you.
I'll ask the clerk to call for a vote.
Commissioner Waldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner May,
Yes.
Commissioner Unger,
Yes.
Mayor Wilkerson.
Yes. And the motion carries. Moving on to action item number 12, 2022 Parks Department fees.
Yes, thank you. Sean Pickens, our Parks Director, presented last week on the options for changes to the department fees for programs and facilities. Parks Advisory Board and staff recommend option number 2, which represents a modest increase in fees in programs and rentals.
You have the floor.
Motion to approve?
Motion to approve. All right.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner May, second Commissioner Waldridge. Any discussion or questions for Mr. Pickens?
No, appreciate you taking the time to get all this done. I trust that this will work in the right direction as we continue to move forward to look at our pricing, moving forward as we're coming out of COVID and things of that nature, and as we improve our parks to make sure that we're keeping the competitive rates and things.
Absolutely.
And giving our residents exactly what they want.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Yep.
See no other discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask the clerk to call for a vote.
Commissioner Waldridge?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner May?
Yes.
Commissioner Unger?
Yes.
Mayor Wilkerson?
Yes, and that motion carries. We're skipping action item 13, tabling that, and now we're going to action item 14, industrial revenue bond.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. At our meeting last week, the Board of Commissioners directed staff to come up with recommendations after the presentation by representatives of Prescient who want to build a assisted living senior care facility. The finance director, the city attorney, and the fire chief and I we met. We've had numerous discussions and wanted to present a full range of options and understanding what would be the needs of this facility. So in the memo we presented, in looking at service delivery, we estimated an additional perhaps 300, 350 calls per year to this facility. And you can see in the chart, in speaking with Chief Briscoe, he put it together for other facilities that are similar in nature. This, he estimates, our operational cost per hour to run our ambulances, our EMS service, is about $125 an hour. So that comes out to about $60,000 per year. When we were discussing, because we know IRBs are used all across the state for a lot of different facilities. So we also are looking for ways to see if it could work or if it couldn't. And we presented three options. One is to approve what Prescient presented last week, which would basically be the city collecting occupational tax revenue from the first year at about $23,000, and by year 10, actually $63,000. Our finance director, Alicia Boyd, realized that they had made some mistakes and she corrected those, so it's a little bit higher than what they estimated. Second option is to vote against and disapprove the project due to the need to develop an application practice, the length of bonds terms, the effect on property taxes, etc. Third option we have discussed and we offer up it as our recommendation is to authorize staff to negotiate with Prescient for a payment in lieu of taxes, as you all know, a pilot to the city itself. And as you know, we share their occupational tax revenue with the county. So knowing that what we would ask of Prescient is that instead of $23,000 a year, we would receive $46,000. The county would still receive their half of the occupational tax revenue. We would just ask for the full amount. That if the pilot is agreed to, that we would also dedicate a very small portion of the pilot income to the other affected taxing districts. As you know, currently property tax are paid about $1,500 on this. That we would pay that back to the county for the terms of the bond, because as our city attorney was doing research and as we've learned more about this, generally with IRBs, you do reach out to all the taxing districts ahead of time. You talk to them about it before, because there's more than just the city that will be impacted by this. If the pilot is agreed upon, approve the resolution and MOA as amended and present it to, we would present it at our next January work session, incorporating the pilot agreement. And I think something that's extremely important is that directing staff to work on an application process that will create a very user-friendly economic development tool. I think it's important to put in some of the parameters as we look at the cost-benefit, the impact, definitely the value. But we need to have a good, thoughtful process in place and make sure we have the time to review all parts of the project. And adopt the guidelines that would qualify what type of projects are you looking for to use IRBs on, what is perhaps the value, but we would do that, of course, in consultation with you. We'd bring you some ideas. I think option 3 demonstrates to the community that the commission is serious about economic development. We're talking about it now, especially really important for fiscal year 2024. And at the same time, safeguarding the revenues and the impacts on the city and looking at all this very thoroughly. So that's a little bit long-winded introduction than I normally do on an item, but really wanted to talk about it thoroughly and present that to you all.
Thank you. So we're not taking action tonight. Any discussion on this? Open it up. Just want to clarify that if we do option 3, we authorize staff to negotiate on our behalf to work out the payment in lieu of taxes. So we would already be collecting 1/2 of the occupational tax. And we're just asking what we normally, basically we're going to ask for the other half under a pilot. Do we have any precedent for that in any of these? We could basically write this in whatever we want, right?
Right. And pilots, I have done a lot of research trying to find the actual pilot agreements with the governing bodies, and have only found a few. They seem to vary greatly. It depends on the needs of the community, the project, what types of revenues they are expecting to potentially fall short or to need replacement. So it can vary. This seemed like a reasonable option for us to replace at least some of the revenue that we would see being dedicated towards those service costs with the NT runs. And it's an easy formula to implement.
Any other, Commissioner Unger?
I'd just like to say, obviously other cities have a process for this, an application process. It takes time to vet the projects, talk to the other taxing districts and work through this. And I really appreciate staff for working through this so fast, for us not having this sort of process. So I personally lean towards option 2 because I'm one that would like to see the process start sooner than later. But I do appreciate that option 3. I sort of wonder where the failure is that we don't already have this process. But I mean, that's why we're here. We are all for economic development, and we know that things have not been going in the city how we want them to. So here we are, and we are going to create the process one way or another. And I really appreciate all of y'all working through this in a time crunch.
And I should point out that IRBs don't apply to every project because it's a specific industry, specific types of projects. So maybe we just haven't had any opportunities. I don't know. But it is a good opportunity for us to learn. I'm inclined to go option 3.
I was leaning for that, but since we have more time to look at it just a little bit, I'm going to continue on.
But do we need to make a decision tonight on option 3 or 2?
Just a clear direction to staff, so whether or not you would like us to work on negotiations for this pilot for
I'm
option
between
3
2
or
and 3
not.
right now. I can't say step because I'm still looking at 2 and 3.
2 and 3? Okay.
I really haven't made my decision as far as those, but it said that no action was going to be taken, so I assumed that wasn't going to be given direction either of action for the staff to continue, so I still thought I had some more time to think about it, so I apologize. I won't be able to, but if you guys feel comfortable moving on, I will support that. But I just looked at it when it said no action, there was going to be no action, no voting, definitely, and that we weren't going to come out of here with a suggestion of moving forward. So
Right, so one thing we'll make sure we'll do, anything we'll present that to you. We will not, nothing will be set in stone.
Okay.
It's just in the negotiations to see if they are open to that. If they're not, then it's not gonna happen, and we will report back to you. If they are interested, we will report back to you what they're willing to do, but we will not take action or authorize this without your approval.
No, there's no decision up or down on the IRBs being made tonight. We are absolutely not requesting that. We're just saying if you all would like us to move forward with negotiations, please let us know. We'll be happy to do so and bring you a solid recommendation and documents.
I would just require that if those conversations are happening, that the BOC, the entire BOC is just kept in the loop of that as soon as those conversations or discussions happen, that we get an update and email so we can be abreast you know, as things are.
Absolutely.
Very much. May I ask a question? With regard to the pilot
Yes.
as an option, are we negotiating that as it would benefit the county as well, or are we only looking out for the city?
We're only looking out for the city, Commissioner Thompson.
Good. But my other question is Mr. Sparks, County Attorney Sparks and County Judge Executive Wells, are they gonna want to be involved in the negotiations because of, we're only looking out for the city, which I think we only have the obligation to look out for the city. I'm just wondering if that, and will that hinder us if we start talking about double the number?
Right.
So.
We haven't made any plans to actively have them participate in the negotiations themselves. Although I think we did anticipate certainly reaching out to county officials and staff, letting them know a little bit more about the situation and what our plan was, so that they have the opportunity to tell us their thoughts as we move forward.
I like option 3, for what it's worth, for throwing it out there. Yeah, I feel comfortable with that, like you said, because you're still going to present us with something at the end of the day that we still have to approve, yes or no, period.
Yes.
Right.
So it just gives you the opportunity to give us another option.
And option 2, if we did that, we reject it now, without seeing what you negotiate. Option 3, well, at least we can reject it
Right.
later, or approve it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
We want- But either way, we're working on an application process.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Good, good work, thank you.
Thank
Mhm.
you.
I know it's informative. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, moving on to action item number 15, discussion and update on Dolly Graham.
Yes, if I can call Mr. Pickens back up. As you all know, and we met with many of you all at Dolly Graham Park, giving you updates. There's lots of things that are happening. You know, we've had the new playground installed, which is great. We're seeing a lot of increase in use. This is directly related to the splash pad. As some of you all may recall, the previous commission voted for a larger playground and a larger splash pad. And I would focus on the splash pad, and when Sean is going to discuss some of the numbers involved, it really is a much better choice. We had lessons that we learned from the county and at Lakeview, where a recirculated water system was not installed. It was a flow-through, and as some of you all may recall, they had a water bill of about $30,000 that first month. And also that the size really wasn't large enough to accommodate the use. And so, you know, this has been 3 years in the making. We've had 3 different parks director staffs, different commission, different finance directors, all of us coming together to make it work. So this, we're gonna present to you in January about, it'll be a budget amendment on the splash pad. But I'll turn it over, be quiet, and I'll turn it over to Sean.
Thank you, Laura. Yeah, she hit the main points there. We went with a bigger playground originally, which in my opinion was not so much a bigger playground, but the poured in place surfacing. Okay, that's very nice. It's very expensive, but I think it was a smart choice at the time. But again, it did raise the cost. And then the other big, I guess, ticket item was, as Ms. Haig had just mentioned, the original plan for the splash pad pre-COVID was a flow-through system. And then as things kind of progressed, we kind of learned lessons from Lakeview. No disrespect to the county. You know, splash pads is an animal, and you learn kind of as you go. But we kind of learned from that, and decisions were made to change that to a recirculating system. However, a recirculating system is almost double the cost, if not more, because you've got a lot more involved on the front end of it. You've got basically a flow-through system is just like turning on a sink. It comes from you hook to the plant board's water source, It goes through your water features, goes down the drain, goes to sewer, and then it's done. So, you know, with the recirculating system, you now have a ginormous water tank in the ground. Okay, then you have a room full of pumps and chemical controllers and a chlorine storage tank, a muriatic storage tank, a whole litany of plumbing lines and electrical work and, you know, sensors and probes, and the list goes on and on. Okay, so the upfront cost is considerably more. So that's what's driven the cost up as well. But the long-term cost is more beneficial down the road because you're not spending that $30,000 water bill or more, you know, 4 or 5 months out of the year. Yeah. So yes, it's more expensive up front, but you're earning that back as the years go on. So those were the main reasons for that. And then, you know, there was some other upgrades to the park that were sorely needed, in my opinion, were, you know, very good ideas. The basketball court, you know, originally it was just called to have a sealant on it, not new pavement and no color coat, no lines, no nothing. It was just going to be a fresh color sealant. Well, that's just a Band-Aid, to be honest, you know. So we put a fresh, and you still have the swale in it. So we decided to go, you know, Dolly, you know, in my opinion, it deserved better, you know.
Yeah.
So what? So that's the case. So we're looking at the construction bids to release the bid on the construction. That all of this was delayed by the pandemic by at least a year because we couldn't get approval through the federal government. The tribal organizations had to sign off, and several others. With the shutdown, everything just got delayed. Okay. So once we were finally able to do that, we were able to then release the bids to get the engineering done. You know, that process takes 6 to 8 months to have that completed. So the engineering and the architectural work and the state permitting, the local permitting, all that kind of stuff to make it happen was completed November 30th, I believe. And then as soon as we got the completed plans, we then put it out to construction bids, put it out to bid for construction. Now, and that will come to you all, obviously, you know, before that's accepted. But we weren't going to have a firm idea of what it's actually going to take to construct it until we get those back. Rough estimates, you know, we do have estimates from Branstad or Carroll on the construction for that. And with all those things we mentioned earlier, and including the architecture and engineering designs, we're looking at anywhere between $450,000 to $475,000 total, you know, for the splash pad.
Which would, let's translate in, as you may recall, we have the grant for $250,000. We matched it with $250,000. So our initial outlay was going to be $500,000. This would add approximately $250,000.
Yeah, a hair less than that, and we'll know more certain when the bids come in. They come in on Wednesday, so we'll have the bid opening on Wednesday at 2, and then we'll really know. We're hoping they come in under, you know, what we're expecting. But we don't really know with inflation currently and the cost of materials through the roof. That's another reason why the cost estimates are higher as well. You know, if we would have bid this 2 years ago, if COVID didn't hit and everything else, this more than likely would have been $75,000 to $100,000 cheaper, probably. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what the splash pad construction design experts have kind of told me. Is that it's gone up that much in just the 2 years.
So just updating, and as we talk to you guys, you've also heard a lot where we're talking about bathrooms. Mm-hmm. And we do need new bathrooms. The 2 bathrooms we have will not be able to accommodate, we know, the increased use. Mm-hmm. We have some, you know, Sean will come back in January for the, to authorize the spending on the splash pad, so it will be open by May. We will also present later in January or maybe February about the proposal we received for the bathrooms at Dolly Graham. And we also put an option there in case for a new shelter. That too will add to the cost, and it's likely what we have learned from the one proposal received, that even if we authorize them in January, it would not be available until April of 2023. So we will need to reach out to the community. We will need to bring in, there's some very nice porta potties, bring them in on trailers, but we will need to do that to accommodate the increased use when the splash pad is open along with the playground. We will then get more defined estimates for you to look at to proceed with construction of new bathrooms. Sorry, this was a lot to, you know,
Yeah.
part of when understanding this, and I feel like even when meeting with you all at Dolly Graham, I haven't understood all of the mechanisms and all the changes until in the last couple weeks. Then to really understand, because I have the old Dolly Graham
It's been
estimates,
3 years, yeah.
the Alicia Boyd put together this great timeline of all the decisions. We see what we estimated for the old cost, you know, the approval of the larger playground and the larger splash pad, and the additional costs. So you want to be transparent and upfront with the cost involved.
And we do have a line item right now for Dolly Graham in our budget as requested. That is still a line item.
General
It's sort of
operations.
in general operations, just so if there's money moved over, that we do know that that money is funneling right into Dolly Graham, so we can keep a running tab of how much we're spending there. I know that, I think I'd requested it to pop out to a line item just long enough to get through all of these upgrades and things, so people know we're focusing on Dolly Graham, and then once that happens, it goes back into just the parks itself.
Commissioner Unger?
I was just wondering with, and I don't know enough about splash pads and all the plumbing and work involved, but would it be in our best interest to plan the bathrooms at the same time that we're planning all of that other work? To sort of do that all at the same time, could that potentially save some money, or no?
Can I add to that? There is a federal law, believe it or not, that requires a splash pad to have a bathroom that's within 200 feet.
Yeah, and we have that, so
Right.
we're technically meeting the law, technically,
Right.
but
Right, and that's what I'm saying. It's like, I agree with Commissioner Unger. It's like, if we need them, and we're technically meeting the law, I think we've technically met the law too many times in the past. I think we should probably, you know, try to figure out a way to make those happen.
yeah.
So that's what I was gonna say too.
I mean, I believe we need the upgrades.
Yeah.
And better, bigger, better, more stalls, better bathrooms, but if we have all that work going on, I just felt like maybe cheaper to do it all at once.
Yeah, in an ideal world, yes, with the construction going on at the same time, it'll be different construction contractors, because the splash pad is under a different contract, and so it'd be a whole new bid and a whole new, maybe the same construction company wins the bid, maybe, but we have to go through the whole bidding process again, anyway, so.
Okay, just thought I'd ask.
Well, yes, in an ideal world, it would be nice to have it, especially just for the disruption. If all the construction's going on at the same time, so.
Thank you.
Do we have an idea of what the water usage cost would be with the recirculating system versus,
I have that, but I don't have it with me.
is it 5,000, 10,000? Is it, how much are we gonna save by putting in the recirculating
Oh,
per month?
you'll probably save every bit of $20,000
A month?
a month
So we'd make our money back in a year.
than what you would be spending in water bills. Yeah.
There's more chemicals, more equipment, more things we're gonna have to buy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's true. too.
Along the way. we're gonna
Yes,
have to
yeah, you have to keep chlorine
maintenance
stocked,
and
and,
stuff.
yeah.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, so like I said, on the 22nd this week, we'll have what the construction's gonna be, and then we'll come in January, with that bid, as well as a budget amendment.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Look forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
we have requested a delay in the continued discussions about the police chief candidates. So while we resolve a few outstanding issues, so that we would not go into executive session to discuss that.
We're still in
Any
new business.
Any new business?
Oh.
You skipped 2 items.
New business first, any? It's the end of the year. All right. Anything you want, coming up in January? You may have covered that last week.
tomorrow's Carrie Lasley's day that you signed off on, so it starts her day. And she celebrated her 90th birthday on Saturday, which was a great celebration at the country club. So she was so tickled about her Carrie Lasley Day, being an educator and all that she's done in the music world. So.
And I didn't say publicly, she was a sixth grade teacher of mine. So.
There you go. So.
Commissioner Thompson?
I know I've asked for this in the past. I would like to know where we are in the next meetings as we go into 2022. The Capitol View Park lease ownership, whatever we want to call it, discussion. I know that there are probably at least 3 state agencies that need to be involved in that discussion.
And then some.
And maybe more. I would really like to, I know at one time we were shooting for December 15th and that a lot of things popped up. So I would ask that we get that kind of back on the radar. And I would like to know what the city's participation may be with regard to Lakeview Park, as it is obviously going to affect our tourism in town, and we've always talked about how that has to flow through our tourism corridor. So I'm not asking for a joint session. I'm just asking for an update, and if there is, if they're going to come to ask for that, and that leads to the last one that I have, which is what's going on with BNC. What are we? What's our timeline? What are our plans at this point? Has there been a fundamental change in the plans total? And I'd kind of like to know where we are. And I know that we are hamstrung, and City Manager Haig and I have talked multiple times ad nauseum about the parking structure and how that's holding up a lot of things that we're doing. I just want to make sure that we have a plan if it happens, if it doesn't happen. And I would almost at this point say that the board should probably entertain what are some other options we could use for that property and talk to the developers about it. Because as I said in our very first meeting in January, I had concerns that come 2022, we weren't going to see the first piece of dirt moved, and it is coming to fruition. So I'd love to have an update on those 3 things, and at least have some type of meeting or discussion on those issues.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Actually, we already started working on a memo for that. We'll have that ready for the January 10th work session. And then I'll have to get with the city solicitor, and we'll get with Sean Pickens about Capitol View Park lease and then Lakeview Park. And then I can come back to you and give you a good date when we can do an update, because that might take a little bit more time in discussions with the county. But Parcels B and C is definitely on for January 10th.
Can we at least try to schedule at least a tentative discussion with finance and corrections and KSP? Is that something I can ask?
It's totally, we could totally do that.
And they're open to that. I mean, I know that you've had conversations, I've had conversations, and they're open for those conversations.
Any other new business? Or unfinished business? Any unfinished business since last week? No. Have you seen none?
Mayor?
Yes.
Mayor. I make a motion that we go into executive session per KRS 61.8101F, discussions which might lead to the discipline or dismissal of a member of the public agency.
Second.
Okay, a motion Commissioner Baldridge, second, Commissioner May. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No opposed? Now go into executive session.
You made it through.
Open session.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
I have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.